Remember when the worst thing about work was that it was boring? Like 1999, the big existential crisis was TPS reports. I'm watching Office Space last weekend and thinking, man, that's a period piece now. The guy just wants to do nothing, and the movie treats that like a revolutionary act.
Yeah, Peter Gibbons was a visionary. He saw the soul-crushing emptiness of the service economy before we all got too broke to care about our souls. The dream was, I don't want to sit in a cubicle staring at a screen all day. Now the dream is just having a cubicle with health insurance and a chair that doesn't destroy your lower back by 35.
Right. The anxiety shifted completely. In the 90s, the cultural complaint was ennui. Fight Club, American Beauty, it was all middle-class people with stable jobs losing their minds because everything felt fake. I mean, the narrator in Fight Club has a condo, a decent salary, but he can't sleep at night because the IKEA catalog is mocking him. Fast forward 20 years, and nobody can afford the condo. The IKEA furniture is financed through a firm at 30% APR. Different genre.
Exactly. Boredom was a luxury good. You had to be secure enough that the absence of meaning felt like the wound. Post-2008, the wound is precarity. The baseline mood shifted from, is this all there is? To, will there be anything left for me? And that pivot, I think, is the asset economy swallowing everything. The financial crisis didn't just wipe out jobs. It revealed that the game is ownership, not work.
And the policy response? Look, I'm not going to defend the bank bailouts and their execution, but the idea was to prevent a total collapse. The unintended consequence, though, was that quantitative easing pumped trillions into financial assets. Stocks, bonds, real estate. If you owned those before 2008, you got a decade-long subsidy. If you didn't, you got to watch the price of a starter home in Boise go from $180K to $450K, while your wages flatlined. The Fed's own data shows the wealth gap exploded right then.
Oh, the unintended consequence. I love it when the consequence is just the entire point. QE was asset owner life support. The central bank said, we need to stabilize the system. And by system, they meant the portfolios of people who already had capital. So you got a professional managerial class, lawyers, consultants, tech middle management, who could scrape together a down payment from parents or stock vesting, and they rode the appreciation wave. Everyone else became permanent renters with volatile gig income. That's not an accident. That's a design feature. The state chose to tether prosperity to asset prices, and now we're all trapped in the logic of a hedge fund.
But that professional managerial class is still precarious in its own way, right? They might have a house with a Zestimate that makes them feel rich, but they're one layoff away from losing it. Their wealth is illiquid and concentrated in a single asset. And if they bought in at the peak of the 2021 frenzy, they're underwater on a 7% mortgage. So even the winners are white-knuckling it.
No, I know. That's the sick joke. The PMC thinks it's part of the owning class because it owns a mortgage and a 401k that's basically an S&P 500 casino ticket. But they're just high-income labor with better props. The real division isn't professional versus working class anymore. It's asset owners versus everybody else. And I'm talking about the kind of ownership where your capital earns more than your labor. If you need a job to pay the mortgage, you're still a worker. You're just a worker the bank tolerates because your monthly interest payment funds their dividends.
This is where I think the geographic sorting matters. Post-2008, the recovery concentrated in a handful of superstar cities. San Francisco, New York, London. Those places became asset vaults. The globalized winners, the ones who could plug into finance or tech, bid up real estate to absurd levels. Meanwhile, the losers got hollowed out and handed OxyContin. The 2016 election was basically the backlash of the asset-poor hinterlands against the asset-rich coastal PMC. Trump promised to revalue their labor, or at least punish the people who devalued it. Tariffs, immigration raids, it's all an attempt to make labor scarce and valuable again, without challenging asset supremacy.
Yeah, and that's why it keeps failing. You can't fix the asset economy with culture war and tariffs. The core dynamic is that a dollar earned through wages is taxed higher than a dollar earned through capital gains. And the cost of shelter is pegged to global capital flows, not local income. So you get vibe-session absurdity. The official inflation numbers are cooling, but people feel broke because their rent is still 60% of their take-home pay, and eggs are $8. The central banks say, look at the core CPI, but nobody eats core CPI for breakfast.
Right. There's that paper about information and macroeconomic expectations. Basically, the stuff you buy frequently shapes your perception of inflation way more than the broad basket. So when your grocery bill jumps and your landlord raises rent again, you think we're in hyperinflation, even if flat-screen TVs are cheaper. And the asset economy makes that distortion permanent, because housing is the biggest expense, and it only ever goes up, because we've financialized shelter as a retirement vehicle.
That's the self-fulfilling prophecy of credit scores you mentioned last week. Your ability to get a mortgage depends on a score that's built by responsible debt repayment. But to build that, you need access to credit that's denied if you're poor. The whole system sorts people into deserving of assets and not. And once you're in the asset club, you vote to protect your home values through zoning restrictions, NIMBYism, tax loopholes. It's a closed loop. The 90s boredom was a dead end. This is a trap.
So where does that leave the younger generation? The ones who came of age post-2008 and are now staring down a housing market where the down payment requires either a trust fund or a lucky crypto swing. They're not bored. They're furious and exhausted. The cultural output reflects that. Music like Brat's Summer is this hedonistic, existentialist flash, because the long-term future is illegible. The only sane response to knowing you'll never own assets is to dance on TikTok until the meme coin rug pull gives you a 6-month retail therapy window.
And the final irony is that the government's fix is to turn into Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, slashing whatever remains of public goods so they can keep cutting taxes for asset holders. We're dismantling the welfare state to pay for the asset subsidies. At this rate, the only way out is to inherit a house from a relative who bought it in 1972, or to form a housing co-op that seizes a vacant office building. The lost soul of the 90s found God in Fight Club's basement. The lost soul of the 2020s needs a good estate lawyer.
And a credit score of 780. So basically, the American dream is now a gotcha game where the SSR poll is a grandparent with a paid-off bungalow and a disdain for reverse mortgages.
We should pitch that to Zillow. Zestimate your inheritance likelihood. The asset economy, quantified. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I think we need to talk about why central banks are failing to convince anyone the economy's good, because it really depends on whether your balance sheet says owner or renter.
Exactly. The vibes are real, and they're compensating for that the soft landing only soft landed on people who had their seatbelts fastened in first class. We'll be right back. And we're back. Before the break, I was making a grim joke about Zillow estimating your inheritance, and Rollo, you got this look on your face like you just bit into a lemon that's also a foreclosure notice.
Yeah, because the joke is the diagnosis. The whole asset economy thing, the vibes recession, that the soft landing only existed if your balance sheet said owner, it all traces back to one original sin. The deal that wasn't made.
The Great Financial Crisis deal. I know where you're going.
Of course you do. We've done this riff at, 4 different bars now? But I think it needs to be on the record. 2008 melts down. Banks are insolvent, millions losing homes, and the Obama administration walks in with a choice. You can stabilize the system by making the banks whole and hope the tide lifts all boats, or you can use the crisis to fundamentally renegotiate the social contract. And they chose door number one. They chose financial stability over moral hazard, and in doing that, they destroyed the social contract.
I mean, I think that's a little bit of...
A little bit of what? Tell me what's untrue.
No, look, I'm not going to defend the choice as optimal. I'm going to defend it as comprehensible. The system was on the brink. We were looking at a potential global depression, not just a recession. TARP was passed under Bush, the auto bailout happened, the stress tests happened, and you remember what the political climate was like. The Tea Party was rising. There was no appetite for what would have been seen as a left-wing power grab.
A left-wing power grab? You mean like, we saved your system, now you owe the people who funded it? That's not a power grab, that's reciprocity. Instead, they got Tim Geithner and Foam the Runway. They got mortgage modifications that were voluntary and reached a third of the people they were supposed to help? Meanwhile, the people whose fraudulent mortgage-backed securities caused the collapse got bonuses.
The bonuses were galling. Nobody disputes that. But I want to push back on the nobody went to jail thing, because it's become this shorthand for the entire failure, and I think it's more complicated. A lot of what happened was immoral, but not technically illegal under the laws as written. And they did set up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They did Dodd-Frank, they did stress tests that changed bank capitalization.
Marty, you're listing regulatory architecture to me like I don't know it exists. The problem is that architecture didn't change the underlying power structure. The banks got bigger, the foreclosure crisis kept rolling, and the message to the working class in places like Youngstown and Scranton was, we will move heaven and earth to save the financial system in a weekend, but your mortgage is your personal responsibility. That's not a social contract. That's a protection racket for capital.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the effect. I guess I'm just saying there was an offer. There was a progressive offer put on the table. It just got rejected so hard we forgot it existed. The stimulus had green jobs money. There was retraining. The ACA was supposed to decouple health insurance from employment so people could move, take risks, not die. The idea was globalization and automation are going to churn the labor market anyway, so we'll cushion the blow with healthcare and education and worker retraining. That was the deal.
And the deal was bullshit. Not because retraining is bad, obviously it's not, but because if you're a 52-year-old auto parts worker in Mansfield, Ohio, retraining means a 6-week coding boot camp that puts you in competition with 23-year-olds who will work for half your old wage. It's not a ladder, it's a chute. The government was telling people, the thing you built your life around is gone, and our solution is a LinkedIn Learning subscription.
But what's the alternative? Just let whole communities collapse with nothing? I'm not saying the execution was good. The Trade Adjustment Assistance Program is notoriously underfunded and cumbersome, but the idea of a social safety net that helps people transition is, in theory, the right one. The Nordic countries do this.
The Nordic countries also have sectoral bargaining and unions that have power. You can't import the Danish flexicurity model into a country that just spent 40 years gutting labor law and making it illegal to not be at will. That's the part the Obama technocrats always missed. They'd fly in with their behavioral economics and their randomized controlled trials about what nudge would get people to sign up for community college, completely ignoring that the house was on fire and the people inside had lost all trust that anyone was coming with water.
The trust point is huge. I think that's the thing that broke. By 2010, 2011, the recovery was technically happening, but it was the most unequal recovery in modern history. The S&P is going up, corporate profits are going up, but median household net worth is still underwater. And the White House is saying the economy is healing, and people are looking at their foreclosed neighbor's house and going, For who?
Exactly. And that's when the offer stops being an offer and starts sounding like gaslighting. We saved the system. Now please enjoy your gig economy and opioid epidemic. The social contract isn't just about material transfers. It's about dignity and recognition. The technocratic center-left says, we'll give you retraining and healthcare. But what people hear is, your way of life was inefficient, and we've decided you need to become a different kind of person.
Yeah, that's the part I think so many of us missed. I remember being in rooms where the conversation was all about how to message the benefits of the ACA, how to make retraining sound empowering, and nobody stopped to ask whether the whole framing was insulting. We were offering help desk tickets to people who'd lost a world.
And they said no. Not just no, we're going to flip the board. That's the 2016 election, that's Trump, that's everything that came after. The people who were told to be grateful for the crumbs of a recovery decided they'd rather burn the bakery down. And I get it. I don't agree with the politics, but I understand the impulse. If the system is rigged to make you pay for the crimes of the people who broke it, then the system doesn't deserve your loyalty.
So where does that leave us? We're now in 2025. The board has been flipped. Trump's back. Tariffs are flying. The administrative state is being dismantled by meme lords. And the deal is even more dead than before.
It leaves us in the find out phase of the fuck around that started in 2009. The original sin wasn't just the bailouts, it was the refusal to impose pain on the people who caused the crisis. When there's no accountability for the powerless eventually decide that all rules are fake, and then they vote for the guy who says he'll break the rules for them.
So what's the counteroffer now? Because I don't think we can go back to the 2010 era progressive offer and just try it again with better vibes.
No. That ship has sailed, hit an iceberg, and is currently being live-streamed sinking on Blue Sky by the one guy who still cares about Fediverse integration. The next offer, if there is one, has to start with accountability. Not retraining, not a tax credit, actual consequences for the people who broke the world, and actual power for the people who had to live in it. Until that happens, we're just rearranging deck chairs on the Lusitania.
This is the conversation I think the Democratic Party has been avoiding for 15 years. And maybe that's why we keep losing to a guy who sells digital trading cards.
The guy who launched a meme coin during his inauguration and rugged his own supporters, and they still love him. Because at least he's honest about what the system is, a casino where the house always wins, unless you burn it down. The center-left kept pretending it was a library. That's why the deal wasn't made, and that's why we're here.
So we ended that last bit talking about why the center-left keeps losing to a man who launched a meme coin during his own inauguration. And I think part of the answer is sitting in a glass jar on some influencer's reclaimed wood kitchen island right now.
You are gonna make me drink raw milk, aren't you?
I'm not going to make you drink it, but millions of people are out there chugging it, filming themselves chugging it, and telling you that the reason the FDA says it's dangerous is the real reason you should be drinking it.
Right. This is the segment where we talk about the Great Unthinking. And I want to be precise here, because the easy take is, stupid people drinking bacteria milk. But that's not what this is. I mean, yes, you will absolutely get listeria. But the raw milk thing isn't a failure of knowing. It's a performance of not caring.
Exactly. It's political defiance performed through consumer choice. The guy pounding a gallon of unpasteurized milk on Instagram isn't making a scientific claim. He's making an identity claim. He's saying, I am the kind of person who does not trust the people you trust. Your evidence is just your priesthood scripture.
And this extends to everything now. Seed oils, blue light glasses, ivermectin hangover that never really died. It just metastasized into a generalized suspicion of molecules. There's a whole parallel pharmacopoeia built on the logic that if a credentialed institution says X is safe, X is slowly killing you.
The seed oil thing is fascinating to me because it's so perfectly unfalsifiable. You can't taste them, you can't point to them, they're in everything. So any bad health outcome you experience, tired, sad, your knee hurts, you're 40, that's the seed oils. It's a totalizing theory of bodily decline that requires no double-blind studies. Just vibes and a guy on a podcast who says he switched to beef tallow and now he can see through walls.
Wait, I saw that guy. He was advertising a meat-based meditation app.
Of course he was. And look, some of the concern is downstream of real scientific debate about omega-6 ratios and industrial processing. But that debate gets flattened by the algorithm into they're poisoning you versus you're an idiot. There is no the evidence is mixed and here's some nuance t-shirt. The nuance doesn't merch.
That's the mechanism that interests me. We've talked before about how the internet makes everything into a team sport. But this is worse. This is taking things that used to be questions of fact or personal health and turning them into shibboleths. You don't believe in raw milk. You identify as a raw milk drinker. And once it's an identity, contradicting it isn't correcting a misconception. It's attacking the self.
Right. And the algorithms have figured out that the correction attack cycle is the most engaging content ever made. So you post your raw milk video. The fact checkers and the scolds and the people with biology degrees descend on you. Your replies are a war zone. The algorithm sees engagement and pushes it to more people. Some percentage of them think, wow, look at all these elitists trying to silence this brave truth teller. And the identity hardens.
It's the persecution complex as a service. X is basically a factory that takes a mild preference and, through a series of quote-tweet pylons, turns it into a foundational worldview. You posted a photo of your sad little glass of room-temperature dairy, and by Thursday, you're reading pamphlets about the Federal Reserve and thinking maybe we should go back to the gold standard.
But here's what kills me. This is not a symmetrical information problem. It's not like both sides have their own facts. The raw milk people are not producing a competing set of peer-reviewed studies that show pasteurization is a hoax. What they're producing is an aesthetic. It's the amber glass jar. It's the farmer's market tote. It's the beard and the Carhartt beanie and the implication that drinking this will align your chakras and own the libs simultaneously.
It's trad-pilled consumption. And it's not even really trad. Actual traditional farmers pasteurized things when they could because dying of tuberculosis was not part of their cherished heritage. This is a fantasy of the past being sold to people who have no material connection to agriculture, but a deep spiritual need to reject modernity.
And that need is real. I mean, this is where I have to check my own wonk instinct to just debunk. People feel like the systems around them are lying. They feel this in their bones. The food system is genuinely full of ultra-processed garbage that is making us sick. The healthcare system will bankrupt you. The government said the Iraq War had WMDs. The trust deficit is earned. And into that deficit steps someone selling certainty in a mason jar.
Yeah. The failure mode of the liberal technocratic state is that when you finally do tell the truth about something, nobody believes you because you've spent decades optimizing everything for corporate interests while speaking in the language of public health. You can't spend 50 years allowing glyphosate to be sprayed on everything and then clutch your pearls when people decide they'd rather take their chances with listeria.
So, is the answer to just let people get food poisoning until they rediscover Louis Pasteur on their own?
No. The answer is that you can't solve an identity crisis with a fact sheet. The reason MAGA and this whole MAHA, Make America Healthy Again thing fuse together so seamlessly is that they're both offering the same product, a story about who the bad guys are, and a ritual to prove you're against them. The bad guys are the same people in both stories. The globalists, the bureaucrats, the experts. the people who think they're smarter than you.
RFK Jr. is the perfect avatar for this. He's been a crank about vaccines for decades, but he's also, and I hate that I'm about to say this, occasionally right about regulatory capture. He'll spend 3 hours on Joe Rogan, alternating between a completely unhinged theory about Wi-Fi causing cancer and a perfectly accurate description of how the FDA's revolving door works. And the listener just hears, this guy sees the truth the others are hiding.
Because he's credibly anti-establishment, the credentialism works in reverse now. Having an MPH from Harvard doesn't make you trustworthy in this world. It makes you suspicious. That the entire medical establishment thinks you're dangerous is, to a certain kind of person, the strongest possible endorsement.
And we are in this insane loop where the liberal response is to demand more censorship, more fact-checking, more of the very institutional authority that produced the mistrust in the first place. You can't fact-check your way out of a legitimation crisis.
No, you can't. But you also can't just hand-wave away the stuff that's going to hurt people. There are kids getting measles. The raw milk thing isn't a metaphor. People get sick. The blue light glasses are a grift. The seed oil panic is driving people towards saturated fats that will give them heart disease. There's a material consequence to all this.
I know. And I don't know how you hold both thoughts at once. That these people are being lied to by grifters, and that the grifters are filling a hole dug by the people telling them not to listen to the grifters. It's a snake eating its own legitimacy.
The thing I keep coming back to is how much of this is just boredom. The world is so terminally online and so devoid of actual political agency for most people that these health panics become a substitute for politics. You can't do anything about the supply chain or the labor market or the forever wars, but you can throw away your vegetable oil. You can buy a $70 water filter that restructures the molecules. You can participate in a cosmic battle between good and evil in your own kitchen.
The eschaton is nigh, and it's in your cupboard above the stove.
Exactly. And the left has no equivalent to this. There's no left-wing version of the raw milk guy. Because the left-wing impulse is to say, well, we need systemic change and collective action. That's a 5-year organizing commitment. The right-wing impulse is, buy this different thing and you are saved today. It's a much better consumer experience.
It's also that the aesthetic of left-wing health is joyless. It's all eat less meat, drive less. Here's a sad lentil soup that will save the planet. There's no swagger to it. The Maha thing has swagger. It's got beef tallow and raw liver and lifting heavy rocks. It feels vital and masculine and transgressive. The left is offering a lecture. They're offering a vibe.
A vibe shift that I think is permanent, or at least durable. We're not going to fact-check our way back to a world where the FDA label is sufficient. The skepticism is now a prerequisite for being a certain kind of person. And what's wild is that this skepticism, this total refusal to believe anything an institution says, is a weird kind of credulity. You reject the CDC, but you'll believe any anonymous account with a supplement affiliate link. It's not skepticism. It's just redirected trust.
Redirected trust toward people who are absolutely thrilled to monetize it. The grift is the point. The raw milk guy isn't making money from milk. He's making money from the content about the milk. The views, the likes, the subscribers, the supplements, the course on how to decode your blood work. It's a whole parallel economy built on the idea that the official economy is trying to kill you.
And that economy is now backed by the incoming administration. I mean, the guy running HHS is on record saying that there's no safe vaccine schedule. This isn't fringe anymore. It's going to be policy. The Great Unthinking has its own cabinet secretary.
Which means the next time there's a pandemic, and there will be another pandemic, we're going to be fighting a two-front war against the virus and against a government that is actively amplifying the reasons not to trust it.
The raw milk is just the starter culture. What's fermenting is a complete inability to respond collectively to anything. And once you've convinced people that every collective response is a plot, you've essentially ensured that the next crisis will be handled by nobody for nobody, with catastrophic results that will be blamed on, I don't know, seed oils.
All right, I'm gonna go drink some pasteurized, homogenized, FDA-approved 2% milk that tastes like bureaucratic safety. And I'm gonna enjoy it, knowing that my enjoyment is itself a political act that marks me as a tool of the globalist elite.
Enjoy your compliance dairy, sheep.
Bah. Let's take a quick break. We're back. I'm still thinking about my compliance dairy.
While you were tasting the homogeneous embrace of the regulatory state, I was thinking about what that milk represents for the American taxpayer. It's pasteurized, standardized, guaranteed safe by a dozen agencies, and it costs twice as much as the raw milk your cousin in Normandy gets from a guy named Jean-Luc who just waves at the cow. What the hell are we buying?
I'd argue we're buying the absence of bovine tuberculosis, which I'm told is a pretty good deal. But I know what you're doing. You're gonna pivot to the silent center and the urban paradox, aren't you?
I'm already there. Everyone's been yelling about the culture war, pronouns, drag brunches, whatever. But the actual silent majority in this country is economically left and socially center-right, and they're getting absolutely hosed. They want robust public services, healthcare, transit, safe streets, decent schools. They'll vote for higher taxes if the state works. And what do they get? Progressive cities that can't pick up the trash, fix a pothole, or build a public bathroom under budget.
I mean, that's the urban paradox in a nutshell. Take San Francisco. Per capita, the city spends roughly $600 million a year on homelessness, over $100,000 per unhoused person. And the situation on the ground looks worse than a Bruegel painting. You've got tent cities next to million-dollar condos, needles on the BART, and a public health department that spent $1.5 million on a single portable toilet. What is the value proposition there?
And everyone blames socialism. But San Francisco isn't socialist. It's a market fundamentalist housing regime that treats land as the ultimate speculative asset, wrapped in the aesthetics of a Bernie Sanders rally. The city's budget gets captured by consultants, union contracts that optimize for overtime rather than outcomes, and a Byzantine permitting process designed by people who'd rather see a dead dolphin get a tribute mural than approve a fourplex. You can't call that leftism. It's just expensive nihilism.
I won't go full everything is neoliberalism, but you're not wrong about the capture. I was looking at the numbers. San Francisco has over 80 departments and agencies, many with overlapping mandates, and the average cost of building a single unit of affordable housing hit $1.2 million. Meanwhile, in Vienna, the municipal government builds high-quality social housing at a fraction of the cost, and a far larger share of the population lives in it. We're taxing at European levels, but delivering services that are frankly embarrassing.
Right. And that's the silent center's primal scream. I'm not talking about the loudest people on Twitter. I'm talking about the dad in Milwaukee who works construction, wants a strong social safety net, thinks cops should solve burglaries, and doesn't care about microaggressions in the faculty lounge. He looks at his property tax bill, up 40% in 5 years, sees the same potholes, and hears that Minneapolis is paying $300,000 a mile for bike lanes that nobody rides in January. That guy is not a MAGA fascist. He's just correctly noticing the math doesn't add up.
And that's the heart of it. The Democratic coalition has become a bizarre alliance between the donor class, who want low capital gains taxes, and the activist class, who treat every policy dispute as a purity test, while the actual working class base, which is economically left but culturally traditional, gets nothing but means-tested table scraps and a lecture about implicit bias. No wonder Trump picked those people off. He pretended to listen to their material grievances, even if his solution was a 25% tariff on avocados and vibes.
Look, I hate saying anything nice about that guy, but the 2024 election was a primal scream from the silenced center. People with moderate social views got branded as bigots for asking why their kid's school spent $40,000 on a decolonization consultant while the roof leaked. Meanwhile, the same blue state governance delivers the least efficient healthcare on Earth. We spend $13,000 per capita, nearly double the OECD average, and life expectancy is falling. We're paying for a Ferrari and getting a unicycle.
We need to be precise. Some of that spending bloat is uniquely American. Admin overhead, insurance billing complexity, pharmaceutical gouging. But yes, the return on public investment is abysmal. I pulled data from the OECD's Government at a Glance. The U.S. ranks near the bottom in citizen satisfaction with public services, even in high-tax states like New York. Meanwhile, Denmark has a marginal tax rate that would make a California libertarian faint. And yet people report high trust in government because they see a benefit. Their digital infrastructure alone, one login for everything, automatic tax filing, makes ours look like a fax machine fight club.
And that's the key. Trust. The silent center isn't anti-tax. They're anti-getting fleeced. If you told the median voter, your taxes will go up 5%, but you'll get universal childcare, functional trains, and a guaranteed doctor's visit within a week, they'd take that deal. But what they've experienced is taxes go up, the MTA announces a new equity-focused realignment of bus routes that makes commutes longer, and somehow the city council is holding hearings on renaming a park. The progressive reputation for being unable to deliver a sidewalk while spending 3 years on community input is self-inflicted.
It's process without product. And the worst part is, the right weaponizes this to argue that government can never work, so they can cut taxes for the rich and let the infrastructure crumble further. It's a doom loop. But we're not going to rebuild the public sector's credibility by refusing to acknowledge that progressive governance has, in many cases, executed poorly. I think people like us, data-brained, institutionally sympathetic, have to be the first to say, this 500-page environmental impact report for a bus lane is insane, and it's why we can't have nice things.
I'll go further. The left needs to rediscover universalism, not this hyper-targeted equity approach that fragments everything into 1,000 little interest group slush funds. The silent center wants a system that treats everyone like they belong, not a system where your neighborhood gets a pothole filled only if it maps onto a particular axis of historical oppression. I'm all for corrective justice, but the optics of San Francisco's Dreamkeeper initiative, spending millions on stuff nobody can quite define while the general fund is broke, makes normal people insane.
The Dreamkeeper initiative is a perfect example of a good impulse, addressing structural inequities, collapsing under its own lack of operational rigor. It became a parody of itself. You want to win back the silenced center? Show them a pothole gets filled in 48 hours, no questions asked. Show them a housing permit gets approved in 30 days. Deliver boring competence. The vibe shift would be enormous.
We should do an entire episode on the competence aesthetic because it's the political superpower of the decade. But for now, I want to sit with your point. We're taxing like social democrats and delivering like a failed state. And nobody in the professional managerial class wants to admit it because they're too busy writing grant proposals for their own salaries. The silent majority is loud. They're just not being heard over the sound of their own pothole-damaged rims.
Driving over those rims, paying the highest effective tax rate of their lives, watching a city council meeting where they debate whether the phrase sunshine is ableist. It's a hell of a way to run a civilization. I say this as someone who believes in government. We have to stop being our own worst enemy.
And maybe start by admitting that the European social democracies we envy didn't get there by subcontracting everything to McKinsey and holding a community visioning session every time they need to build a crosswalk. They just built the damn thing. We need to earn the trust back, one functional DMV visit at a time.
I'm ready to campaign on the DMV. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, maybe we can talk about what actual value for taxes looks like in, say, Norway, and whether we can steal anything without also importing lutefisk.
I draw the line at lutefisk.